Let me start with this and say that I hope everybody had a great Thanksgiving and that I hope you spent time with your family and loved ones. With that being said, last week we did have some games. We didn't have as many as we normally would during a regular course of the week, but we did have 3 district matchup play on Tuesday night, and some of these teams did play over the Thanksgiving holiday. With that being said, let's go ahead and jump into the Week 4 recap of the Central District, starting with... Let's start with the Swick Blue Storm, who came into the week as a wild card, but as the week progressed, I think they became a team that started to be one of those ones that have started to get their stuff together. They opened with a 91-72 win against a GRAC opponent and district opponent in the Lakeland Lakers. JUCO Franklin was the leading scorer with 19 points and 4 rebounds and 3 steals. Noah Courtney had 17 rebounds, and 10 points, but only 2 of those 10 points came from the floor. Ethan Brown was one of 2 players to come off the bench for the Blue Storm. He had 21 points and 4 assists. Dre Boyd was another Storm player who was in double digits off the bench, who shot 4 of 9 from the field, and he finished with 12. Swick played over the Thanksgiving break, started with a very impressive 70-47 win against Fort Scott, where Courtney led the way for the Blue Storm with 18 points. And they had one other player in Jaden Lawrence, who finished with 14 points and 5 rebounds. The final game for Swick over the Thanksgiving holiday was a comeback win. They came back from a 34-29 point deficit at the half to win their 3rd straight game of the week, finishing with a 73-68 win against Walters State. Lawrence once again was a starter in double figures. He had 20 points and he shot 6 of 12 from the field, had 6 rebounds, 6 assists. Was JUCO Franklin, who was 8 of 15, and he also had 23 points. Jacoby Huddleston was the last starter, and he had 10 points for the Blue Storm in their 3rd game. The Blue Storm will play only 1 district game, but 3 games overall. They will play Wednesday, November 30th against Lincoln Trail in Robinson. Then on Saturday, December 3rd, they will play Wren Lake, a GRAC opponent, but not a district opponent. And then on the 4th, they will take on 3 Rivers in the Illinois-Missouri Classic. Let's go ahead and jump into the next team, and that's going to be the Lewis and Clark Trailblazers. They picked up their opening district win with a very impressive 64-56 win over Shawnee. The Trailblazers led the game at the half, 27-25, and they were led in scoring by Armand Williams, who had 15. 2 other Blazers were in double digits in scoring, and Kevin McCoy and LT White, they had 11 points each. Lewis and Clark will go to Vincennes for the first Battle of the Trailblazers, and then they will host John A. Logan on December 3rd and will participate also in the Illinois-Missouri Classic by facing Mineral Area, and we'll go over the matchups later on in the podcast. Speaking of the Trailblazers of Vincennes, let's go ahead and jump into their week of games. They only had 2 of them. They opened with their redemption season began really in earnest with a road victory over the Kaskaskia Blue Devils, winning that game 70-56. The Blazers had 3 starters in double digits, led by Michael Osebansu, who shot 9 of 12 from the field and had 12 rebounds. He finished with 19 points, but he committed 4 fouls. So Michael really is starting to come together as a player, but he is really in foul trouble a lot. Cale Gaither was another one who finished with 12 points. He shot 5 of 10 from the floor, and the last Trailblazer starter in double figures was Caleb Johnson, who had 11 points and 3 huge steals when it looked like Kaskaskia was going to come on a run. The big play off the bench for the Blazers was Chris King, who had 9 points, 6 rebounds, and 4 assists, again, all coming off the bench. Vincennes had only 1 other game. Again, it was a Thanksgiving holiday, so they only played 2 games. This one was against Volunteer State, where they dominated that game, winning it 97-61. Michael was again the leading Blazer in the points category. He had 25 points, But the biggest thing I took away was not by his able to put up points on the stat sheet, the rebounds and all that. He was able to stay in the ball game, and by that I mean he only committed one foul. That's it. All game he committed one foul. I think he's really starting to put everything together, especially after that Thanksgiving meal that they had at Coach Franklin's house. Caleb also finished with 18 points. Tazos Cook and Shiloh Jackson added 10 each after having a down night against Kaskaskia. They really bounced back against Volunteer State. The leading player off the bench for this game was James Locke IV, who had 9 points. Vincennes will play 2 district games. They will once again play in the Battle of the Trailblazers against Lewis and Clark on November 30th, and then on December 3rd, they will travel to Olney, another tough road game early in the season, to take on the Blue Knights on December 3rd. Logan opened up their district schedule on the road as well, going to Mount Carmel, but they handled the Warriors of Wabash Valley. The leading scorer for the Vols was Kamari Peterson, who dropped 20 points. James Dent added 15 of his own with 5 3-pointers. Elijah Jones and K.J. Debrick had 11 points as well. Logan has 3 more games coming up this week, including 2 district opponents. They will host Kaskaskia on November 30th, and then they will travel to the Trailblazers of Lewis and Clark and probably win that game, to be completely honest. And they will also compete in the Illinois-Missouri Classic by taking on the Greyhounds of Moberly area. Again, Coach Tyler Smith-Peters really picking up a tough non-district opponent in Moberly area. Let's see how that's going to help them. Now that we talked about the 3 teams that picked up wins on the district opener, let's talk about the 2 teams that were idle, starting with the Olney Central Blue Knights. Marshawn Dickerson and Deshaun Sims led the way for the Blue Knights as they picked up their 5th win on the season as they beat Southeastern Illinois 100-64. Dickerson was 10 of 16 from the field, 4 of 5 from 3, and he finished with 29 points. He also had 7 rebounds. Sims was 8 of 13 and 4 of 8 from three-point land, and he had 5 assists as well. He finished with 20 points. The last starter in double figures was Darian Lewis, who had 11. Jeffico Thomas had a double-double off the bench, finishing with 11 rebounds and 12 points. The Blue Knights as a team shot 51% from the floor, but it will be really put to the test this week as they will have 2 district opponents opening up against Shawnee as a home game and then hosting the Blazers, who are coming off of a Battle of the Trailblazers. They will be hosting the Vincennes Trailblazers. The Lincoln Trail Statesmen did not play in district play Tuesday, but they did take on a GRAC opponent and the Wren Lake Warriors when Lincoln Trail traveled to Ina. The Trail had 2 players in double figures, starter-wise, and they were Greg Jennings and Chris Felix, each having 12. The leading scorer was Joshua Tyler, who had 18 points and hit 2 threes. As a team, the Statesmen shot 42% from the field and 37% from behind the arc. That's going to be very big when it comes into district play, and if they're able to duplicate those numbers, it's going to be very huge for them. They traveled to Iowa over the Thanksgiving holiday and took on the number 17 at the time in Division II, Bryant Stratton, out of Wisconsin. They won that game 78-76. Unfortunately for us, there were no stats available, and when I reached out to Dave Hunter as well, he had no stats for that game as well. Again, if I'm not able to find a box score on the NJCAA website, I reach out to Dave, and Dave is more than willing to share his notes with me, and I am forever, ever appreciative of that, Dave. Thank you so much. I hope to have you on the podcast soon. The Statesmen saw their 7-game winning streak come to an end on Saturday as they lost to the host Southeast Iowa Blackhawks 58-56. The leading scorer was Clint Winkliff, who hit 3 trays, and the other Statesman in double figures was Greg Jennings. Again, Lincoln Trail will host Swick in their district opener and then travel to Mount Carmel to take on the Wabash Valley Warriors. Let's go ahead and talk about the 3 teams that unfortunately dropped their district opener, starting with the Kaskaskia Blue Devils that not only dropped their district opener, it was their first loss as a season as a team when they lost to Vincennes. As a team, the Blue Devils shot 35% from the field and only 25% from behind the arc. Obviously, you're not going to win many games. Your leading scorer was Jalen Petty. He shot 6 of 14 from the floor and had 2 threes and 8 rebounds. Zeke Dawson finished with 13 points and was the most efficient shooter Coach Hancock had. He was 5 of 10 from the floor and he had 9 rebounds. Jackson Hari was the top player off the bench, and he only had 6 points. That's really going to say a lot when you're not able to pick up a win and your bench is essentially non-existent. Jackson Hari did a good job adding 6 points off the bench. Kaskaskia has 3 more games this week, and they will start it off against another tough opponent, another ranked opponent in the number 13 Logan Volunteers on November 30th. Then on December 3rd, they will host the Lakeland Lakers, and on December 4th, they will participate in the Illinois-Missouri series, taking on St. Louis Community College. Lakeland ran into a buzzsaw in Swick when they played at Belleville, and they lost the game 91-72. The Lakers had 3 players in double figures, but had nobody off the bench that had more than 3 points. Amar Kujalev had a double-double with 21 points and shot 9 of 13 from the field. He also had 18 rebounds. Dallas Cox hit 2 trays and finished with 15 points, while Johnny Close had 3 steals and 14 points before Close fouled out of the game. Lakeland then goes to Iowa over the holiday to take on Southeastern Iowa in their classic, winning the game. Yassine Hassan was the leading scorer for the Lakers, shot 8 of 10 from the field, had 19 points, while Amar shot 7 of 10, had 7 rebounds, and he finished with 17 points. Tyler Chapman came off the bench and led the scores that way with 13. In the final game of that classic, Lakeland was led by 6 threes by Johnny Close, who fouled out again for the second time in 3 games, as he finished with 24 points. Cox finished with 11 points as well, but he also fouled out in that ball game. Once again, the Lakers had no bench play as they fell 81-68. They had nobody in double digits, and Chapman finished with 7 points. The Lakers will have 2 district games this week as they will host the Warriors of Wabash Valley, then travel to Centralia to take on Kaskaskia. And unlike the Blue Devils and the Vols of Logan, they will not play in the Illinois-Missouri Classic. Wabash Valley drops their district opener against the Volunteers of Logan 82-65, but that's not really the big story here. The big story was that the Warriors struggled from behind the arc, only shooting 6 threes all game and missing all 6. They did shoot 53% from the field, however, and had 3 starters in double figures. They were led by Kashawn Casey, who was 7 of 11, added 6 rebounds, and he finished with 18 points. Jacoby Hetty finished with 16 points as well, and was 7 of 12 from the floor. And the final Warrior in double digits was Gary Clay, who had 4 rebounds and finished with 10. But, like Kaskaskia, like Lakeland, they had no bench presence, with only one player who made a field goal off the bench, and that was Brandon Razor Moore, who also added 3 rebounds. The Warriors will travel to Mattoon to take on the Lakers on November 30th, and then they will host the Statesmen of Lincoln Trail on December 3rd. They will not play in the Illinois-Missouri Classic. And the last game we're going to recap is going to be the Saints of Shawnee. They go into Godfrey and pick up an L, and again, an incredibly close ball game. The Saints only had 1 double-figure starter, and that was A.K. Hazley, who had 14 points and was 6 of 14 shooting. They did have 2 players off the bench with double figures, and Tyrone King, who had 11, hitting 2 of 4 threes that the Saints could net in the ballgame. And Jay Moore finished with 10, shooting 4 of 7 from the floor. They will only have one district opponent this week, and they will travel to Olney to take on the Blue Knights. And then they will play Saturday against Atomwabi at home. What's interesting, as I was deep diving more into the Saints' schedule the next couple of weeks, is they will not host a district game until the new year. That's very interesting, as they have to run a gauntlet on the road, and then they get somewhat of a reprieve by playing most of those games back at home. It's going to be interesting to see how Shawnee handles that second half of the district swing. That's going to do it for the recaps of this past week. Let's go ahead and jump into our first matchup of this week on November 30th. And that first game is going to be the the number 13 ranked Logan Volunteers against the Kaskaskia Blue Devils. Kaskaskia, unfortunately, has faced another ranked opponent in back-to-back games. Like I said, they lost to Vincennes, who was number 8 at the time, moved up to number 6 in this week's poll. Logan is going to be probably the favorite to win this game, and I think they might win this game going away. Not only are they playing at home, they have a ton of starters that can score. Not only Isaiah Stafford, who I particularly like, but they also had, this last week, they had Kamari Peterson had 20 points, James Dent had 15, and Elijah Jones and KJ Dobrik, again, adding double digits as starters as well, on top of Isaiah Stafford, who's more of a facilitator, able to get those guys the balls. They're able to spread it out. They're able to hit the three when they need it. They're able to go into the post when need be, and that was something that Kaskaskia really struggled against Vincennes on. Again, Michael Osei-Bonsu had 25 points. If Osei-Bonsu, was able to stay on the floor a little bit longer, who knows what kind of night he had, and he finished. He didn't have 25 points that night. He had, 19 points. But again, 19-25, he had a big night, and he could have had a bigger night if he was going to be able to stay on the floor. And that's what Logan has, is players that are able to stay on the floor, stay out of foul trouble. I think it's going to be very difficult to Kaskaskia to pick up that win. Speaking of the Trailblazers, let's go ahead and jump into that ball game. It's going to be the battle of the Trailblazers, with Vincennes hosting Lewis and Clark in that game. And again, I mentioned it when I covered the Logan Kaskaskia preview. I just think that Vincennes is going to pull out a win here. They play very well against Lewis and Clark. Naturally, over the past 10 years, they've played really well against them. They've been able to handle their business against the Trailblazers of Lewis and Clark. But really, if Michael has been able to put together what he did against Volunteer State, against Lewis and Clark, it's going to be a huge night for him. With that being said, I can really see this being a trap game, because Vincennes, the players, not the coaches, are going to look forward to that matchup against Olney Central. A former assistant coach is now the head coach at Olney, so it's going to be very interesting to see what that game is going to be like. But let's go ahead and talk about why I think this could be a trap game for Vincennes. It's going to be the fact that Lewis and Clark is a very scrappy team. Again, they had Armand Williams with 15 points and two other starters adding 11 points apiece. It's just going to be very interesting to see how much Coach Franklin can teach these guys going into the week, as they have two big games heading up. Let's go ahead and talk about the last two teams that played a district opponent last week in the Lakeland Lakers versus Wabash Valley Warriors. I see Wabash bouncing back and being able to handle business against Lakeland. Unfortunately, because I see the Lakers really struggle to have bench play. Yes, the Warriors struggled as well, but I really see them being able to spread the floor. They're not going to go 0-6 again for the second straight night against a district opponent. I just don't see that happening. They're going to be able to hit their threes. They're going to be able to spread that ball out across the floor and being able to do what they want to do against the Lakers. With that being said, I can see Lakeland being able to probably force them to settle for the 2, not for the 3, or for a bad 3-point shot. It's going to be very interesting to, as both these teams look to pick up their first win on the district schedule. It's going to come down to bench play. Who's going to have the better bench? And right now, I think that's going to be Wabash Valley, unfortunately, for Lakeland. So let's go ahead and jump into one of the games that one team has not played, and that's going to be the Olney versus Shawnee matchup. I really think that Olney is going to be able to win this ballgame just because it's at home. Both teams match up very well against each other. It's going to be a very big back and forth affair. I can see Marshawn Dickerson once again having a big game against the Saints, but I can also see the Saints with A.K. Hazley being able to take over the ballgame. The Saints were really injured the last time I saw them, so it's going to be very interesting to see if they're able to stay healthy and if they're able to get their bench to score points, because again, bench play is really important in this district, and if you're able to have good bench play, you're going to win these ball games, especially when it's a 50-50 toss-up like it is in this ballgame. But again, I think with a 50-50 toss-up, I'm going to go with the home team, and that is going to be the Olney Blue Knights. And if I wasn't going to be so interested in watching the Battle of the Trailblazers, I would turn on the Lincoln Trail versus Swick matchup. And because it's going to be a very good game, not only because Swick has a district win under their belt while Lincoln Trail's looking for their first win on the district season, it's going to be the fact, how does Lincoln Trail bounce back from losing after going on a 7-game win streak, while Swick is coming off of a 3-game win streak and going into this ballgame. So it's going to be very interesting. Again, Lincoln Trail started 0-2, then they ran for 7 straight wins before losing in their game on Saturday against a very good Southeastern Iowa team. And you have Swick, who's coming off of 3 big wins. Again, Fort Scott, Walters State, and the district win. With that being said, I unfortunately am going to go ahead and give the win to Swick just because they have that district advantage at the moment. If this game was a little bit later in the district schedule where both teams have played 2 or 3 games, it might be a different story, but for right now, I think the nerves of Lincoln Trail is going to be a little bit too much for them, and that Swick is going to be able to come out with the victory. So the district has a full slate of games on November 30th. Again, all 10 teams are playing each other in that game. We will see 3 more district games on December 3rd, starting with the Lewis and Clark Trailblazers versus the Logan Volunteers. Logan heads to Godfrey to take on the Trailblazers. Unfortunately, I think they're going to come out of Godfrey with a huge win going into Moberly area. Again, like I said in my preview with Kaskaskia, I think Logan's just too big, too strong. I think Kaskaskia is going to come, Lincoln Trail, again. So we have a full slate of games on November 30th, all 10 teams playing each other. On December 3rd, we have 3 more games. Then let's go ahead and start with that preview of the Lewis and Clark Logan game. It's going to be in Godfrey, Illinois, but I don't think home court advantage is going to help the host Trailblazers in this ballgame, unfortunately, because I think Logan is just going to be too big, too strong, going to be able to spread it out a little bit more, going to be able to hit the 3, going to be able to pass it into the post when they want to, and they're all around going to be able to take control of this ballgame, pick up a huge road win, and going to be able to head into the Illinois-Missouri Classic with a little bit of momentum. Again, they would be going into that with 4 straight wins against a very tough Moberly area team. I can see Coach Smith Peters maybe resting their players if they get up huge in that ball game. But you can never really count out Lewis and Clark. Like I said in the Vincennes, this is very much a trap game, and the players might be looking forward to Moberly area and allow Lewis and Clark to get up on them and to upset them. But I just don't see it happening, not this early in the season. If it was, 8 to 9 games into the district play, then I can see that probably happening a little bit more as they're looking forward to that second turnaround of games. But really, this early into the season, I think that Coach Tyler Smith Peters really has his team rolling on all cylinders and ready to go into district play and looking to defend their district championship. The second of the 3 matchup is going to be the Kaskaskia Blue Devils against the Lakeland Lakers. And it's going to be very interesting because I believe both teams are going to be 0-2 coming into this matchup. Yeah, I believe Wabash Valley is going to beat Lakeland, and I believe Logan is going to beat Kaskaskia. Both teams are going to come into this ball game, if my predictions are right, 0-2, looking for their first win of the season. And I think Kaskaskia might pick this one up just because Kaskaskia plays 2 ranked ball clubs, and they are going to be tested very, very early in the district play. Again, Swick's not a bad team for Lakeland, and neither is Wabash Valley. They're just not to the level that Vincennes and Logan are. So with that being said, I think that Kaskaskia is going to be able to do a little bit more that they haven't been able to do the previous 2 games. I think Coach Hancock is going to be able to get inside his players' head and being able to allow them to see what they can do, what they can achieve if they're able to do it right the first time around and not wait until late into the ball game to be able to take control of this game. And I just see that Kaskaskia picks up the big win here, going 1-2, going into the third week of district play. Unfortunately, I believe Lakeland is going to fall to 0-3. In the final district matchup on December 3rd is going to be the Alney Central Blue Knights hosting the Vincennes Trailblazers. And the Vincennes Trailblazers, I believe, are going to come out going into this ball game winners of the Battle of the Trailblazers against Lewis and Clark, going to Alney for their second district game in 3 games in the district is going to be very difficult for the Trailblazers. I think Coach Franklin is going to have this team ready, though. I think it's going to be a very knuckle slugfest. I think both teams are going to be able to hit each other in the mouth. It's going to be all about who responds well and who crumbles under the pressure. And I just think that Vincennes is going to be that team that prevails just because they are so deep on their bench. And I don't think that Coach Glash really has much of a bench right now. Again, he might find it later on in the season, but this matchup being so early in the district play, I just see Vincennes being able to, if Michael gets into foul trouble, I see Shiloh stepping up. I see somebody like Caleb Johnston being able to hit a 3, and the King twins being able to hit those 15-footers when they're given to them. It's just going to be an overall good, I think it's going to be a very good game and definitely one of the better games on December 3rd. But I do see Vincennes going into the third week of district play 3-0. So I'm not going to be able to go into a huge deep dive of these non-district games. I think Shawnee is going to handle Etowamba, and I think that Swick is going to be able to handle their business against Rend Lake. At least I hope so. When these district teams aren't battling off against each other, I really want to see them do well in district or in non-district play against other opponents. So I will be rooting for Shawnee. I will be rooting for Swick in those non-district games. So those are the 2 games on December 3rd that are non-district. Let's go ahead and recap the Sunday, December 4th, Illinois versus Missouri Classic. It's a 4-game series. Kaskaskia versus St. Louis Community College, Swick versus 3 Rivers, Logan versus Moberly area, and Lewis and Clark versus Mineral area. I think that as a whole, the district is going to go 3-1 here. I think Kaskaskia is going to be able to handle St. Louis Community College. I think Swick, in a very, very tough game, but it's going to be on a neutral floor, is going to be able to outlast Three Rivers. Again, Coach Tyler Smith-Peters has a very tough opponent in Moberly area. So I can see that one going either way, but I hope that Logan wins this ballgame. Again, I always root for district teams when they don't play district opponents. In the final game, unfortunately, I don't think that Lewis and Clark is going to be able to pull out a win against Mineral Area, just because Mineral Area has played very tough competition, and they are a very tough team, while Lewis and Clark, while scrappy as they are, I don't think they're there yet. Give them another year, and I think they will be able to be a big-time contender in this district. That's going to do it for this week's episode, guys. I really hope that you like, comment, and subscribe if you like the content. Next week, I'm hoping to have a couple different coaches on, so it's, once again, not just me talking. I wanted to wait until district play kind of got settled a little bit more before I started inviting players or coaches on to talk. With that being said, I will see you all in the next one. Bye.